What I've done is I've taken the table of contents from Wikipedia, and I am absolutely positive that I now know the sport and can tell you all about it. So get ready, Internet. I'm about to drop some knowledge on you. Some football knowledge. It is marked off in increments of 10, from 10 to 100. Initially, I thought that it was 100 feet, but that would make for a very small field and a very short game. I believe that 100 miles is right out. Unless the players use jetpacks or are genetically enhanced humans with DNA that's been spliced with that of a gazelle. When science makes this opportunity available, I will totally watch that show. Since both of those seem so very wrong and America does not embrace the metric system, I am going to assume that it is 100 yards long and that the field is measured by fabric store employees. An American football looks like a grapefruit with two party hats on opposing sides, but less pointy so as to not puncture someone. I assume that the design has something to do with physics and math, and that makes me sleepy, so I'm not going to talk about that. Obviously, players are necessary to have in any game, unless it's robot football, and I would totally watch that. So, Grant Imahara, get on it. The list of players and what their job entails are as follows. These are the players that call out heads or tails in the coin toss. Each quarterback gives the black and white striped shirt guy a quarter, and whoever wins gets their quarterback. Punters are guys that wanted to be soccer players, but they didn't want to compete with other people that were kicking things. These players do exactly what their name leads you to believe. They stand on the field, in place, and kick like can-can dancers. They run down the field backwards. No one knows why. These players are outfitted with turtle shells and randomly lope across the field. Slowly. So very slowly. Even though these players are on opposite sides of the spectrum, it is easier to lump them together to explain what it is that they do. The defensive line stands on a white painted line, holding hands, trying to prevent the opposing line from coming through. There's one trick though. The opposing line can't go until one person calls out for one person in the offensive line to come through from the defensive line. No, that's Red Rover. These players are clairvoyant, and they have the ability to speak with the football spirits that also converse with the people on the sideline. Both of these players monitor the markings on the field and make sure that they stay pristine and pretty. You can tell which ones they are by the holster and the spray paint can. The game is separated into halves, so logic would dictate there are two halves. Sometimes they play longer than these two halves, and that is when my DVR's soul cries. The pisser with these so-called halves is that they have the opportunity to call timeouts. This is when all of the players have to sit quietly for 3 minutes to think about what they've done. The problem with these times out is that it doesn't make for even halves, so it is a very lopsided thing. One team has the ball and then they get angry and kick the ball to the other team. Someone catches it and tries to be cool, like, "Hey dude, you dropped this, let me bring it back to you." What happens next is essentially running the gauntlet. The original team is trying to run into them like they are bulls, and the football is a red cape. Initially, I thought the purpose of football was to keep the ball in your possession. Now I think that there are two purposes. If you have the ball, you don't want to be taken down by a guy who looks and most likely feels like a Big Mac truck. especially when you're getting hit at that velocity. Everyone without the ball just does a lot of running and jumping and landing and hurting and pigpiling. The football point system kinda sucks. You get 7 points for running all the way to the end of the field into a place that is cleverly called the end zone. Typically, it's followed by a very small celebration with people cheering and hugging and some people pointing to the sky. I don't know why. Maybe because that's where the football came from. They were just honoring the air. I think they should go all out and shoot like fireworks from their hands or pull a rabbit from their helmet or, I don't know, build a canoe. At some point, a team is given the opportunity to kick the football into something that looks like a giant fork where the middle tine has just been ripped off. So this little tiny space gives you 3 points. 3 points to kick a ball into a tiny space that's up in the air. So you have to kick up and over within a very small parameter. But, and that as I said before, that gives you 3 points. But if you run it in to the huge expanse of the field, you get 7 points. That doesn't seem logical to me. In football and almost every sport, injuries are bound to happen. There is actually a section in Wikipedia for American football just devoted to brain injury. Sports are very intense activities, therefore, I'm not really into it. I like cerebral comedies, and I like that I'm able to understand that they're funny, so I don't think I could be a football player, especially if brain injury is that prevalent in the game. When I read those 2 words, I thought, hey, I can get behind this. But you know what? False advertising. There are no unicorns, wizards, vampires, and no buxom ladies clutching the leg of a football player with the background being like the expansive Scottish Highlands and a lightning bolt is coming down illuminating their figures, and that's not there. Fantasy football is apparently where people make up their own football teams and forget about their friends, family, and loved ones for a season. Football either starts or stops with the Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is when the team that scored the most is against the other team that scored the... Alright, so the Super Bowl ends football season. It takes place in early February. The halftime show is typically musicians I don't care about and commercials. So that's my impression of football. And since I said it, and it's now on the internet, it must be true. 2, 3, 4. I know a lot about sports. I know a lot about sports. I know a lot about sports. That I know absolutely nothing about sports. Nothing.